Hey guys, and welcome back to Biologue. Hope you're having a great day and a great week. In this video, we're going to be looking at some scientifically proven study techniques that you can implement right now to ace your GCSE and A-level mocks. So without further ado, let's begin. Now overall, the framework SAAD works really well for understanding and getting information into your brain. Now you may have heard this technique from a really good study YouTuber here called UnjadedJade. Initially, when I did this study technique, I did not think it was very effective, and I found it to be quite time consuming, especially when I wanted to memorize certain chunks of information right before I had an exam, when I could have just looked through my notes again and regurgitated it much more easily if I just looked through my notes and textbook. However, in fact, looking at your notes and looking at your textbook, rereading it again and again has been scientifically proven to be ineffective in comparison to study techniques that you may have heard of like active recall and spaced repetition. And this is because rereading stuff is actually a very easy and convenient thing to do. So think of an analogy as our brain almost does not want to keep that information within it because all we have been doing for it is something very easy, something very convenient. And so it thinks that the information that we have just learned isn't of great importance for it to have a specific place in our brain, and so our brain simply chucks it out of storage or memory. However, in the SAAD technique, where S stands for spaced repetition, A for active recall, A for association, and D for desirable difficulty, it is actually shown to be very useful not only for memorization but also for helping you understand a topic and keeping that information in your brain for a more long-term period of time. So first off, spaced repetition. Now when you revisit a concept again and again over a spaced period of time, over spaced intervals, our brain tends to remember it better. Now why is this the case? This is because of the retention curve or the memory curve. Because as we recall the information over a span of 2 to 3 days and we keep doing it until it leads up to our exam, you will have realized that we have actually regurgitated, we have remembered or we have recalled the topic at least 3 to 4 times before the exam has come. And so we now have a solid grip of the concept or whatever we have learned for a very long period of time because we're doing that again and again and again. And so this is exactly why spaced repetition is so useful. Because if you think of it as an analogy, our retention gets better when we recall the information more regularly, right? So when you look at the brain, if you are able to recall the information more and more regularly, there is something called a neural pathway in our brain. And when we recall the information again and again, these neural pathways strengthen or they become stronger and they make more connections over time. And this is exactly how the information wants to remain in our brain, because it's almost as if when you study that information or when you revisit that topic again and again, now that topic or that information has a designated place in your brain, and the more and more you identify it, the more happy it becomes and the more it wants to stay in your brain, and so the better your memory is of that particular topic. So this is a nice analogy I like to think of whenever I don't feel like repeating the topic again and again because I think it is boring. But when I think of this analogy, it sort of makes sense, and at least I have a little bit more motivation to actually get back to the topic and at least revise it twice or thrice before I start with any active recall method. Speaking of active recall is where you actually try to remember the information you've already learned instead of looking at your textbook, which will contain the information that you already know. So what I like to do for active recall is to use a whiteboard. So this is something I really recommend that you guys do. You can get a small whiteboard, you can get a big whiteboard, whatever it may be, whatever you find preferable. Just get a whiteboard and write down the points that you need to remember, and once you write them down, look away from the whiteboard and see how many points you're able to actively say out and remember. Because see, if you say stuff out loud, it makes it a lot easier for you to understand because it just makes sense. You are covering the points actively and you're saying it out loud, and so you can more easily just tick off the points that you are not able to remember. So what I like to do is, once I have sort of recited the points, I look back at my board, one, to see if I've gotten the basic stuff right, like if I've gotten the definitions right and if I've understood and have been able to recite what each of the terms on that board means. Second thing, I look back at my textbook or my notebook or any one place where I know all of my information is designated and is present at, I look at that and I make sure that I have covered all of the other points that could be possibly tested under that topic or could be possibly asked under that concept. For example, if you take the process of somatic cell nuclear transfer, I write each step of the process as a prompt, then I look away from the board, I recite it, and I try to remember each point. And once I'm done, I look back at my board to see if I've covered all of the things. And yeah, this is exactly how you should be using your whiteboard, because then again, you're able to write down sort of X amount of very little stuff on the board. You're not writing all of your notes down, and so it's a good reminder of how you shouldn't be writing down everything. The second way I recommend of doing active recall is to do past papers, and this can actually be very useful for non-science subjects like English language and literature as well. Speaking of English, this video is very kindly sponsored by First Rate Tutors. First Rate Tutors has an English language and literature GCSE course for the AQA specification. Now I know English is a subject that can be really tricky to revise for, so this course provides you everything you need to know for GCSEs as well as the mocks. Now one thing I love about this course is that it not only provides you with in-depth analysis for every GCSE text, but it also gives you a lot of advanced help like model essays or sample answers that you can use to mold your own English essays. Now another thing I really love about this course is that the course has an English language part, and as you know, I do not like English language. So if I had this when I was doing my English language paper, it would have been a breeze. It would have been so easy because it has model answers per question for how exactly you're supposed to attempt each question, because I know English is very specific in those terms. You need to know how to attempt each question in a very specific style. It has walkthroughs for each and every paper. It has amazing creative writing, story analysis, so basically how you plan your narrative analysis and descriptive writing and things like that. So those are some things I also did struggle with, and I'm sure that these videos will really help you guys plan out your essays, your descriptive writing, narrative writing, etc. Another amazing thing is that the course is entirely self-paced, so you can really take your time to learn and understand the text without rushing to submit assignments or worksheets like you would do if you had a traditional tutor or if you went with traditional tutoring for that matter. Speaking of which, the tutor is also really nice and they respond to any queries or doubts that you may have, and they're really efficient with it, so in this way you're able to cover your syllabus on time. The course is also a one-time payment, so once you purchase it, you will be good to go. You're able to use it on your own basis, and you're able to use it however you like. And the best thing is that the course is always getting updated, so you are up to date on any new material for GCSE English. The last and probably the best thing about the course is that it gives you the exact requirements for GCSE English. So it tells you what exactly examiners are looking for when they mark your essays and what are the insider tips you need to know to get a grade 9. So make sure you guys check out the link in the description for the First Rate Tutors course, and if you're one of the first 50 people to purchase the course, you'll get a 10% discount. Trust me guys, the course is so worth it, and I really hope it's useful for your GCSEs. And now back to the video. Now when I was doing my mocks, English was definitely not one of my favorite subjects, and it wasn't a subject where I was scoring really well in. But that did not stop me from actually giving the subject a shot and trying my best to score as high as I possibly could. So what I did for English was to use the past papers as a form of active recall, and specifically I used the questions in each of the past papers as prompts. For example, in creative writing, which consists of narrative and descriptive writing, I would take the past papers that consist of both narrative and descriptive, and I would make a list of all of the possible questions that could come under descriptive writing as well as narrative writing. And I would have two separate documents for this, so one for descriptive and one for narrative. So under each document, I would have one, the list of possible questions that could come, and two, I would segregate these questions into different themes or different headers. For example, in descriptive writing, one possible theme of questions that could come is about nature, right? So under nature, I would further segregate and further divide it into maybe a question that could come about river or water bodies or describing any form of water flowing. And the second type could be describing a view from a window or describing like a scenery, a picturesque landscape, etc. And I would do something very similar for narrative as well, where under each subsection of the theme, I would make sure at least I had one essay written per theme. Like for descriptive writing, I would have one essay written for any water descriptions, one essay for any view sort of descriptions, etc. So I'll have one essay per theme written down for descriptive as well as narrative writing, so that before the exam I'll have some material to go through and sort of understand how exactly I'm going to plan out my essay in the exam. Because remember, in the exam you only have about 5 to 10 minutes maximum to plan out your essay, and then you got to start writing. You don't have that much time. So it's always nice to have something prior in memory, especially if the topic that comes in your exam is something similar. Like if the topic that comes is something that's water related, you already have the content for it, right? You've already written stuff for that, and so you can literally just take that from your memory, actively recall that, and just write it down, just regurgitate that in the exam. So I find that this is extremely useful, and it's really good if you're not that great in English and you don't know how to sort of naturally put things down at that same moment when you're doing the exam. Additionally, for narrative and descriptive, make sure to write a word list with all of the like flowery and very sort of nice words that you can use in your exam. Because if you're someone who isn't very proficient in English as such, if you're someone who doesn't read as much of books as teachers may recommend you to, like me, it's better to sort of have that vocabulary at the top of your mind, because obviously before an exam you can't be expected to read 2 books or so. I mean, that's not practical. So definitely keep a word list so that you have a stack of words to use in your exam and you're not running out of things to write. We know that the S in SAAD stands for spaced repetition and the A stands for active recall. Now, a good way to do both spaced repetition and active recall at the same time is by doing flashcards. So by doing flashcards, now I know this tip is probably the most basic tip ever, and you might be thinking doing flashcards is something that every single YouTuber recommends, so what is the benefit in that for me if I recommend it? Now, here's the thing. For flashcards, I actually use it in a little bit of a different way than what other people usually recommend you to do. So till now, I had been using flashcards in such a way that I would write everything down on the back of my flashcard just like I would in a notebook. But I soon realized that that was the worst and most ineffective way to use flashcards. So here's what I did. Now, I know for subjects like science, like bio, where there is so much content that you need to learn and the subject is so heavy on content, the technique that everyone tells you to use for flashcards is to write the question and just write 2 to 3 keywords at the back of the flashcard. But I know that for subjects like science, where bio and chemistry comes into place, there's so much you need to learn and remember that for each question there is a huge answer. You can't possibly fit that answer in 1 to 2 words. That's literally impossible. So I generally like to write down my question. For example, if I take a topic like SCNT, the one that we just discussed earlier, somatic cell nuclear transfer, I write that as my prompt or my question in the flashcard, and I write as much information as I can recall in that flashcard, in that one single flashcard. So I make one flashcard per topic, and I do this for every single chapter in my specification or in my syllabus, so that by the end of the year or by the end of when this specification has been done, I will have flashcards for each and every topic. So I find that this is much more useful than just writing 2 to 3 words on a flashcard, because then I have all of the information I need per topic for my specification in one place. This is also why I prefer to use digital flashcards over handwritten ones or paper flashcards, because I generally find that the text and the boldness of the text does help me remember the information a little bit better, and I'm able to write as much as I want on the back of the flashcard on digital flashcards, especially if you use apps like Anki or Quizlet, where I know Anki is paid, but I think it's actually a really good investment. Similarly, you have free apps like Quizlet, alright? So when you use these apps like Quizlet or Anki and you make digital flashcards, you're able to write as much as you want on the back of the flashcard. And so I find this a lot more useful than actually having tangible flashcards where my handwriting may not fit everything I want to on that flashcard itself. But this obviously depends on whichever study technique works best for you. So what I recommend is that you try out these study techniques in areas of the week or the term where you actually have some free time. Like when you have holidays, do not try these study techniques before an exam. I definitely suggest that you try them when you have some time on hand so that you can figure out which one is the best one suited for you. Moving on to the other A, that is associations. Now associations are where you make connections between a certain concept or a topic and you make that connection with a real world concept or something that you come across on a very regular or daily basis. Alright, for example, what I like to do is when I take a certain concept, I like to associate that to certain letters. So if it's especially a list of things that I need to remember, I associate each thing or each pointer in that list to a specific letter or a specific letter of the alphabet. And so this now creates a mnemonic, and if I'm unable to remember the mnemonic, if it's a little bit weird and it doesn't stick in my head, instead I use that mnemonic and I turn it into a sentence that helps me remember the information a little bit more better. So what I like to do is, for example, take the concept of different types of asexual reproduction. Alright, per reproductive type I use a letter. For example, I say the acronym or the mnemonic BBSFV. Where does that come in? So what is BBSFV? Now B in the BBSFV stands for budding. Alright, how I use this is BBSFV. Now if I convert that to a sentence, I can make it into Buddy buys soup for Vikram. Alright, Buddy buys soup for Vikram. So if I do Buddy, Buddy is budding, buys is binary fission, soup is spore formation or sporogenesis, and for is actually fragmentation. Yeah, fragmentation, and the V is vegetative propagation. So again, see, I did active recall and association at the same time. So this is how I'm able to remember lists of things, and I'm sure that if you guys implement this, it will really be very useful for you. And the last thing of SAAD is desirable difficulty. So that's for D. And what exactly desirable difficulty is that it's something where you force your brain to extract the information that you've learned a couple of weeks ago or a very long time ago that may just be present in nooks and corners of your brain. So you may not remember the information very well. And especially for science subjects, remember that the questions that come in your exam are not going to be direct whatsoever. I can guarantee that the questions will not be very simple or direct. Instead, what they require you to do is apply the information that you have learned to different scenarios. For example, if you have a question related to mutations, the question will not come such that, what is the effect of a mutation on protein synthesis, alright? It will come in a specific situation. For example, they may say that in this specific lab, there has been a spill out of certain chemicals or certain mutagens that has caused a mutation in so and so gene. Now what is the effect of that mutation in protein synthesis of that particular cell? So they give a name of the cell in the question. So you need to be able to apply the information or the concept that you have learned about mutations in a question where you need to use the terms that are given in the question, like the cell's name, the lab's name, the gene's name, etc. So by enabling your brain to actually apply that information or the concept that you've learned to different situations and being able to adapt to that is what helps you remember and regurgitate that information a lot better. So that's it for today's video, guys. I hope you liked it. If you did, do make sure to like, share and subscribe to Biologue for more such future videos, and let me know if you have any video suggestions in the comment section down below, like how I use past papers for each and every subject, how I study depending on the subject, etc. So please let me know if you have any video suggestions in the comment section down below. Make sure to like, share and subscribe to Biologue, and as always, I will see you guys in my next video. Have a great day.